So if you were somebody listening to this and maybe they live in an area of the country that they would never expect something like this, I mean, all three of us never expected something like this to come through our region. What would you do just kind of behind the scenes differently to prepare for something that you can't control, like a natural disaster? All right, everybody, welcome to Ryan Reflects. My name is Dr. Ryan Corte, and today I have some good friends and local colleagues on the call with me, Dr. Haley Perry and Dr. Casey Krug. These docs and I went through something that I really hope nobody listening to the podcast ever has to go through. A natural disaster that turned our lives upside down for a certain period of time. But welcome to the show. We're going to have a conversation about this, but welcome to the show. I'm so happy you guys can make it on today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So for those that don't know you very well, could you tell me a little bit about yourself? And Dr. Perry, I'll start with you.
Okay. My name is Haley Perry. I practice in South Asheville, and I own Elite Eye Care. And I have been in practice for 15 years. And let's see, what else do you want to know?
I mean, I think you're being humble by that perspective. You're very involved in the community, very involved in optometry. You have a beautiful family, and you're just a stand-up doc. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I am involved in our state society, and administrator for Vision Source. So there's two.
Awesome. And Dr. Krug.
I get to work with her. I'm Dr. Casey. Excuse me. I'm Casey Krug. I work with Dr. Perry part-time. I think she is being very humble. She runs a great practice here. She has a really great dry eye clinic here that we're trying to expand even further. And so she kind of got me into dry eye, which I owe her a lot for that. Let's see what else. I also run a low vision clinic here. It's a private low vision clinic. So basically private practice low vision, which is not very common. So I'm a small clinic, just 2 days a week. So I work there 2 days a week. And then here at Dr. Perry 2 or 3 days a week, just kind of depends. Yeah, I'm involved. I'm now the president, taking over for Ryan Corte of the Mountain District Society. And other than that.
So something really strange happened for all of us. And it's one of those things, I think, living in Western North Carolina, we didn't anticipate, right? And that was a natural disaster of epic proportion. A Hurricane Helene, who came through. And I think what I've heard a lot of the locals say is that mountains and hurricanes don't play nicely together. And we've definitely seen that. But I want to get a little bit of perspective from you both, because we were all in different areas when this kind of hit Asheville. And Dr. Krug, I'll start with you. When did you first hear about the hurricane, like approaching? What did that look like?
Well, when I first heard, I guess, about it approaching was that, hey, this hurricane's going to come. It's going to be here about 8 in the morning, should be done by 9 o'clock-ish, that kind of thing. No major issues there. And so I remember waking up that morning and getting up. I usually get up about 5:36, somewhere in there, and then up for an hour. I'm like, okay, nothing's going on. It's pretty quiet, normal stuff. I looked outside, it's raining, nothing crazy. And then about 7 o'clock, power went out and it didn't come back on. And the wind just started picking up from there. And then, at that point in time, we still had a little bit of service. I'm like watching the radar, trying to see where the eye is, and it's coming. And I'm like, it should be, again, passed by 8, 9 o'clock. So I ended up going out at like 9:30 and driving to my farm that's down the road, about 20 minutes or so. And on the way there was a couple trees down in the road, so we cleared those out of the road, trying to be good Samaritans and just kind of keep the path open. But, just a couple, nothing big. Drive up to the farm, everything was fine. We went to get some tools and stuff like that, and then came back down. On the way back down, again, everything was fine, no issues. But then shortly after that, as we came away from our farm, it just kind of went silent, no texts, no calls, all the power is out, completely nothing. So that was very interesting. And then later on, we learned that we were kind of driving out in the middle of the main storm and had no idea, because we were in northern Asheville. So we actually didn't know all this stuff was, it was still coming. We thought it had already passed. But later I had learned that one of our friends went up there to get his tractor from our land, and on his way up there was like 10 trees down on our property that had come through right after, I guess, after we had left. Didn't even know, because we thought it had already passed and everything, because it was not raining at that point. It was all quiet, so we figured, we're all in the clear, but that was not the case. And so we got back to the house eventually, and then just realized that we were now in the dark, like no communication, no cell service, no nothing. And so we probably waited about a couple of hours for, to see if the power would come back on, and it just didn't. So then at that point we were just kind of like twiddling our thumbs waiting. Eventually we went out and about, but I'll kind of tell you about that later and stuff. But yeah.
So you went out and the storm hadn't even fully passed. That is insane. And I remember it was earlier in the week. It was like Monday or Tuesday, and the storm hit Thursday night into Friday morning. I remember a patient was telling me, because there was an upcoming, and Haley knows this, there was an upcoming event. Both of our kids go to the same school, and they were having kind of a homecoming weekend. And she's like, yeah, I don't know if it's going to happen. There's a big storm coming. And I was like, really? I'm like, I had not even paid attention. And I actually flew out the next day for a consulting opportunity. And so I had completely overlooked it. Haley, what did you when did you first hear about it, and what did that look like from your eyes?
So at our kids' school, I planned the college fair the Wednesday before the storm hit, and the school knew that we were going to probably take on some water. So they were putting out sandbags, and I was so inconvenienced by this. I was just like, how are my people going to get in the door to this college fair walking around with these sandbags? Like, can't you go somewhere else? I was really inconvenienced by that. And then, it started to rain on Thursday, and I'm from this area. I have lived through hurricanes here. I've always felt super protected by my mountains and these big storms.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have any fears at all. I thought nothing about what was about to happen. In fact, it had been raining. Part of the problem was it rained significantly before the storm got here.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much water and rain outside. I had posted, I had used AI to make funny pictures of like optometric staff giving eye exams in a boat, working.
I saw that.
I
saw that on your Instagram. I was like, this is really crafty.
It was funny. I was making light of the situation because I truly had no fears. Now looking back, I feel really stupid. And it maybe was insensitive even, but without knowing how bad it was going to be. But yeah, so Friday morning when we woke up, power went out about 7, realized that communications were not going through. If I wanted to text anyone within this Western North Carolina bubble, it wouldn't go out to them. I was getting texts about every 3 hours from people outside of the area to check on us. And I was saying to my husband, this must be really bad because this guy's texting me from California and asking me if I'm okay. Things like that. So then the next day, we just kind of hung out that night, went to my neighbor's house. I have a lot of friends live in my neighborhood. We had a party Friday night. We had no idea how bad things were. We just knew we were kind of stuck at home and that there was no power. But I had a ton of food and she had a gas stove. And so we just pulled our resources, had a great time Friday night. Saturday morning, thought we would get out of town because we knew things must be bad around us. So we didn't know how bad. And we thought we would go to Winston-Salem to go to a Wake Forest football game. And when we were dressed, imagine I'm dressed up in where all my family's wearing black and gold. We're in the car. We're excited about going to stay in a hotel to get power back, that kind of thing. And we tried to get out and we couldn't get out because there was water across every road or power lines across every road. And when I say water, I'm talking about a rushing river that was a mile in from where it's supposed to be. So power lines, trees, or water were covering every way for us to get out. So we were stuck within a 2-mile bubble. We were able to get out the next day because the water had receded at least across the road enough for us to be able to get out. But that's when evacuating and getting to cell service is when I really understood the extent of how bad everything was, because about how many people had died and drowned and homes had been destroyed, that sort of thing. And I felt really stupid for all of it. Stupid for having a party on Friday night. Stupid for posting the things on Instagram.
No, well, you don't know what you don't know, Haley. I mean, a couple things. You referenced that you had grown up in this area, right? I have not, and Casey, had not either. I think a lot of people like. Sorry, Casey.
From here.
That's right. You are from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went. Yeah, so I was gonna say I agree with Haley. Like we're used to the saying, "Oh, that won't get through the mountains."
Mm-hmm.
Like the storm will break up as it's coming over the mountains. Like that's our typical saying. Like, "Oh, that won't get over the mountains." Like that's it. But boy, we'll be wrong that time. And then so,
I stand corrected. You both grew up here, and that was literally the sentiment I think of every person I talked to, because I was out of town. My mother-in-law was spending a couple days helping out my wife while I was out of town, and I was flying back, and my initial connecting flight always goes through Charlotte because I fly American Airlines a lot. And the flight said, yeah, you're going to get through Charlotte, and then you're still going to be able to make it into Asheville. And I knew how bad it was. I talked to my wife that morning, and she was panicking, and the storm was, you can only describe it so much without being there. I wasn't here when it hit, but the sentiment amongst everybody, just the general thought process was, this will pass. It's the mountains protect us. And so there wasn't, unless you guys heard one, was there like an official warning for us to evacuate? Like, this is going to be as bad as it sounds for anybody?
No.
Nope.
None.
And I didn't get a warning. I don't think Dr. Perry got a warning, but we had quite a few patients who lost their homes. And so we've tried to do everything that we could to help them. And so they've come in and like saying, hey, we lost our homes. And so we're trying to replace our glasses or do whatever we can. But my one question to all of them has been, did you get a warning? Like, just out of curiosity, did you get out? And a lot of them said no. And then the other ones said yes. And I was like, well, if you got a warning, how much of a warning did you get? And the consensus answer is between 5 and 15 minutes. That's what they've all told me. And that gives me chills just like thinking about it. I just can't imagine like waiting on, like, sitting there, you can just see the water rising and things like that. And then, you either making the call on your own or you finally got someone knocking on the door telling you to get out. And that's what they all told me. I did have one patient say that same morning, like I did, they got up, they went to do their normal routine. They went to the gas station like they always do to get their morning coffee. And then they go back to the home, and because they kind of work from home and stuff like that. And they had both said, there was a husband and wife couple, and they had said that they went to their gas station, went in, talked to their people like they normally do, about 15 minutes. When they came out of the gas station in that 15-minute time frame, the road was now impassable. The water was covering it, and they were stuck at the gas station, and they couldn't get home. Yeah, and
wow.
and that was the same time frame that I had been out, like going to my farm and everything. We just didn't know. Yeah, it was wild.
So Haley, when you reference, like, I feel silly about being, doing, because you're very good at social media. You always have crafty ideas. So like you were just trying to engage with your patient base and make up the situation is what it is. We're going to close. And so here's our staff preparing for the next week. And even like, having a barbecue with family and friends, because you had all the food to do so and you didn't want it to go bad unless you had a generator. I made it to Charlotte, and then I couldn't, obviously my flight to Asheville was canceled. I had to make a one-way rental that was extended for a long period of time. It was like 5 to 7 days because they wouldn't give me a car otherwise. And I drove all the way from Charlotte over to right about where Silva hits, which is not too far from, Asheville, about 30 minutes or so. And I sat in traffic. I mean, I was in the car for 7 or 8 hours, trying to bob, just find my way, like bob and weave, dodge through things. But every single area that I tried to get through and get back to my family had either water damage, or there was power lines down, or there was, the Samaritans out there cutting down tree branches just to clear a road. I mean, it was like an apocalypse kind of feeling and experience. It was really, truly unbelievable. So once this all kind of, settled in for you both, and I guess, Haley, I'll ask you first, what did the next week or so look like for you?
So we evacuated. We went to the beach we evacuated to the beach for a hurricane. I just found that so ironic. A friend gave us, he was like, my beach house is open, just go. And so when we were able to get out, we went to Ocean Isle Beach. I had heard, for some reason, Facebook would update about every 3 hours. And I was able, where we were, to get some signal to do that. And the reason why, we haven't said it, but I think we all know it, but just for your listeners, I think I heard 85 of 87 towers were destroyed, like no power to them, covered up in water, like this. So that's why the communication just completely went down in this area. So when we got to, but I knew from whatever those sweet two little towers were doing their work, and I could see Facebook every once in a while. I saw that there was no gas anywhere, and you couldn't buy gas here unless you had cash. That's the thing, is like nobody's internet was working, so you couldn't take a credit card payment. You couldn't, you had to have cash on hand. That's just not something I typically do. I don't keep cash on hand a whole lot.
Yeah, me either.
But we knew we didn't have gas, at least until we got past Greenville, South Carolina. My husband tried to go get gas at this one gas station we knew that was open, and he waited in line for 4 hours. And when he got there, we were going to hopefully take my Volvo SUV to the beach. I had 70 miles until empty. We didn't know if we could make it far enough to get gas deep in South Carolina. So
that she says her Volvo because Aaron drives a Tesla.
Yeah, a
so
Tesla
sedan. Yeah.
So he takes 2 cans, gas cans, to the gas station in his Tesla, and the guy denies him the ability to fill those up because he's only letting people put gas in their cars.
In their physical car. So because he didn't have the physical car that he was filling up, he said, no, you can't fill your gas tank.
So he waited in line for 2
Wow.
hours. And then my husband's like, I went into a blind rage. He was like, I wanted to hurt him. I was so angry. And at the same time, the Facebook has updated that there was a shooting at a gas station at like just down the road. So I was like, we've got to get out of here. So like, we've got to go. Cause at that point, like you said, apocalyptic, everybody's acting crazy. Like, looting had started in some places. So we packed up, all 4 of us and our 2 dogs, one of which is over 100 pounds, into his Tesla sedan, and drove to, we made it to Columbia so that he could charge in Columbia. And then, getting down there, we were able to, there weren't as many evacuees down that way. But once we were there, the people there were so kind. If they heard we were from Asheville, they paid for our dinner once. They bought us groceries in the grocery store. If they could, people were coming out of the woodwork to be kind to us down there. And, I don't ever want to forget the kindness of all the people. We can talk about that some more, I'm sure. But anyway, that's where I went. That's how I got out, and that's what we did.
No, we definitely will. But that is insane because I was able to get back to my family, right? And but I kept calling anybody I could get a hold of that Friday. And then finally I got a hold of my practice director, and she's like, hey, I got through 26 because 26 is now open, 26 South out of Asheville, the only way in or out. And so I was able to somehow get a hold of my wife, mother-in-law, kids who had their own experience the night before trying to get out and frantically not being able to, not having enough gas. It was terrifying. And to hear about the looting and the no gas, no electricity, just a lot of uncertainty. It was kind of I felt very, very helpless, right? I wasn't able to get to them. And eventually when I found out, they said, well, we're coming to you. And we have family local in Charlotte. So we stayed with family local in Charlotte for a while as well, because nothing was really open. We weren't able to serve people. We had no internet. We had no power. We had no water. Well, some places had water. Other places didn't. And so the utilities being just shocked and the whole area being knocked out with cell service was insane. And so I will shoot over to Casey. Casey, you had a different experience, right? Because you have a spouse who he works for the hospital, and you stayed local. You were kind of boots on the ground. What was that like?
Yeah, our experience was a little bit different because we couldn't leave. I wasn't gonna leave my spouse or anything, so we ended up staying. And so my experience was like the first day after we got back from our farm, we were like, okay, now we have zero communication. Let's just quickly drive out and see what's actually going on. And so we realized as we're driving that there's like zero service whatsoever. And so we quickly did drive, and like on our drive out, like was just complete devastation everywhere. Tons of trees, power lines down, and some of these places, like there was no way you're going to even cut the trees down because they were just so entangled in the power lines. You couldn't even go near it, that kind of thing, or half of it submerged in water. And so we were like, all right, at this point, best thing to do is just to go home, conserve gas, because at that point you could see the lines were just like getting crazy. as far as like trying to get gas. I live in North Asheville. Dr. Perry lives in South Asheville. I feel like my experience in North Asheville was just a little bit different. Like there wasn't a lot of the looting or the gun shootings or anything like that. We didn't really have that. In my experience from the North Asheville side is people were standing in line and waiting patiently, and they were all just kind of kumbaya, let's get through this together, which was really great. And so a lot of the stores were, even if they didn't have power and everything, they're like, we'll take cash again. So if you didn't have cash, then you were kind of limited in those scenarios. But so we ended up going back to the house, trying to conserve everything that we had. And because again, there was like no power, I remembered that, oh, we have a crank radio. Let's see what we can get on this thing. So we're in the living room cranking the radio and all of that stuff. And lo and behold, we ended up getting iHeartRadio's Kiss Country, 99.9 Kiss Country. And I don't know if people heard or saw that story, but one of their broadcasters ended up getting trapped in the radio station because a tree had fallen in the yard, so he couldn't get home. So he took an executive decision and ended up staying on the air for like, I don't remember, probably a week straight. A week straight. Live broadcast all throughout the night. And so like it, again, that just gives me chills thinking about, because you just hear the people who, were in areas where hit, but still had some kind of service. Maybe they were near a good tower, or, oh no, these people had Starlink or some kind of, like other service that could get out of the area, not just relying on cell towers. Those people were calling in, and like you could just hear their stories of like what was going on, and it's basically the same thing of just like no power, no water. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, when we tried to get in the car to leave, the day that we did finally leave, we didn't leave till the afternoon, but that morning I tried to go out and turning the radio and hearing it, because I don't have a crank radio. That was the first time I could hear the radio, and he just kept saying things like, well, we don't have anything to report because we can't get out, just like you can't get out. But if you can hear our voice, just know that we're here. We know that you're hurting. Like he was, I get cold chills thinking about that too, because he had no idea what was going on around him either. Just that he couldn't get home and couldn't go anywhere, and that it was bad.
Yeah.
And then ultimately,
that is crazy. I did not know that happened. So somehow I missed that story.
Yeah, and he was there for just days and days. And so then as some service would come on, they would report things. So that's when the series of radio stations and the DJs, when they could get there, they just started like rapid fire. Like if you knew a place where you could get water, it was like, okay, go to this church and get water or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah. And I remember, so like, I can't remember the exact day that things started to slowly come back on. So I was one of the very fortunate ones. I live probably 3 houses down from a, what are they called, where they keep all the power station?
Like a substation?
Yeah, the substation. So I live like 3 houses down from the substation, and this is the only time you're going to say, thank God I live near that substation.
Yeah.
Because that was the first thing they fixed. And so I got power back on, and so therefore I live on a well, and so I was able to get my water back. So I had power and water, so I was comfortable. The only thing we didn't have was, again, communication access. So no TV, no internet, no calls, no cell service. So I ended up, because we didn't have gas, I was like, well, let me just walk miles down the road and finally to see where I can get service. Because if you started getting out of my house, you would slowly get service as you got closer to town, like near the police station and everything. Of course, that's important. So I ended up like the next like 2 weeks, I would just walk a couple miles down the road to get cell service anytime I wanted to call. And beyond the radio, this was the most funniest and most ironic thing to me, is that I love the radio. They did such a phenomenal job. We'll not discount that. But I think people forgot in the moment. They're like, okay, if you need this, go here, or if you need this, call this number. And I'm like, well, we don't have GPS, so we don't know how to get there if you've never been there before. You can't call because there's no call service. So I ended up calling the radio myself. I said, hey guys, you're doing a phenomenal job, but you guys need to remember that we can't call out. You need to give us another option, or stop telling people to text people, because we're not getting these services. So I'm like, if you need someone to do something, you need to say it on the radio, so we're all on the same page, because none of us are getting these text messages.
Yeah.
And so
it was so weird. It was so weird. So I mean, and the lives and the homes and like the damage that has been done. All 3 of us obviously were fortunate from the perspective of, no damage to our homes and families. But we knew people, right? I mean, we had patients coming in, as you referenced. You had patients that lost their homes. Haley and I, our kids' school got hit really hard, and they're just now at the point where they've went and pretty much rebuilt things, that were damaged. The damage control was insane. But I want to shift gears. We can definitely talk about that a little bit. What did this look like from like a practice perspective for you, Haley? You see, you were away for a little bit, and then eventually you're like, you know what, we got to get back. We got to serve the community. Um, don't know exactly what the practice looked like, right? But what did that look like for you?
So I had no idea if it was standing, if it was underwater. I had no idea. I just knew that we had to get out. So when we got to Ocean Isle and I got cell service and got internet, I'm a big AI nerd, as you probably know. But I used AI to help me come up with a plan. Like, okay, there's no water, there's no connection. Like, because in my mind, it's like I have these people that I'm responsible for their jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and I paid them the week that they were out, thinking like, sure, this will only last a week. Luckily for us, it did. Our power did come back on about 10 days, 8 to 10 days. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But so we were able to open up the week after that. But being at Ocean Isle, not knowing what was going on or how long, because the rumors that I would hear is that we went, that the water was gone, which I knew it was gone at my house, but I was hearing that everything was so destroyed that it was going to be 6 months before we would have water. And so thinking about like, okay, how can I open a practice without water? Like, how can we use the bathrooms? And I remember thinking, somebody else said like, okay, it's like day 3, they're expecting it to rain again. And I remember thinking, gosh, I just wish I was at home so I could put my Rubbermaid containers outside and catch the rainwater so we could flush the toilets. Like, those are the things that I were thinking
No,
about.
I mean, that's completely viable, right? Like you're trying to, it's survival of the fittest in that front, right?
Yeah. So I was prepared. Like, I kind of had this whole plan of, if I have no power, if I have no water, here's how we're going to open back up. I went to like a Bass Pro Shop in Myrtle Beach, and I bought like a camping water filtration system, so I can go up to a puddle with this bag, and then it gravity filters the water into the next bag, so at least it can have clean water, because I didn't know where were we going to get water. And then as far as no power was concerned, I stocked up on batteries while I was there. I stocked up on tons of canned foods because we didn't have any way to keep anything cold because the power was still out. And packed all of it in this sedan. We were packed in like sardines into this Tesla. But anyway, I was prepared to open back up, literally come hell or high water. And we didn't have to do any of my emergency plan that I came up with using AI. We were just able to open back up. The only thing we lost here was the signage on the front of my building. It flew off somewhere. I don't know where
Wow.
it is.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the building was pretty much untouched. And when we came back that first week, we took it slow, mostly because I had a cookout for the team at my house before we started back, because I just wanted us to be able to talk about our stories, kind of get it out. So anyway, that was really good and really healing. And then the next week we took it slow because, we had all been through this as a staff, and our patients, I wanted to make sure I had room to be available for patients that had lost things that it was sort of an immediate need, or if they had the water was gross. All of this water was so nasty. It took mud everywhere. That dried. And then it's like all of that was an irritant to your eyes, your sinuses, all the things. So I just wanted to be available. So that first week we were really slow coming back in. And then we decided to just kind of go full throttle the next week after that. Although there were lots and lots of cancellations of people. I mean, eye care was just not everybody's number one. They were just trying to decide, where am I going next? What am I doing next? How am I going to get a car? Things like that. So
how am I going to get water?
Yeah. How am I going to get water?
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't get the clearance for water until just before Thanksgiving, and we're
Correct.
recording this in December of 2024. And we're a little about, 2 months out, a little over 2 months out from this. And it's just insane to hear these things that happened in an area where we never would have imagined something like this. I mean, we all went through COVID, right? And COVID hit us like a ton of bricks. We didn't know what was going to happen, but that was a global pandemic. This was a very much so regional. And I don't know, Haley, if you have felt this, but when you got outside of the area and you were talking to people and they were very empathetic, very sweet, very kind, but like it was truly an isolated area that got hammered so badly, at least from this particular storm, and anywhere along the path. But man, Western North Carolina got it really bad. It was just weird. It was
It was
really
hard to
strange.
see. It was hard to see my friends on Facebook that live other places, even as far as Charlotte, my friends that live in Charlotte or wherever else, that they were having such normal days, and we were just like struggling so badly, and it's all I could talk about. And I actually think I got on my friends' nerves who like live in other states, because it's like it was consuming. Like, it's everything. Everything is devastated. Towns are gone, roads are gone, bridges are gone, people are gone.
Businesses.
Yeah.
Just completely wiped out.
It was hard. That was hard to see everybody else's normal day when we were really just living in hell.
And I would say, like, I was for a brief part of my life, I was in Louisiana, and I happened to be in Louisiana for Katrina.
Oh my gosh.
So I was trying to explain to some of my friends who still live in Louisiana, and the people I still contact with, like, the difference and why the destruction was so much here. And I'm not saying Katrina wasn't bad, it wasn't, but I was just, you don't think that kind of destruction like in Katrina could happen in a small mountain town like we live in. But I was explaining to people that, like, in Katrina, if you watch the videos of it, the water's pretty still. Like, people are driving boats and kind of navigating around it. Well, here it was like, just like, imagine like a riptide. It just comes up and then it just sucks everything back down as fast as it can. And I just feel like that's how fast the water was moving here. And like, anything in the water was just gone. If you were in the water, it was taking you, or it was taking everything with it, because that's how it was, like, just being sucked back into where it needed to go. And so that I think that it caused a lot more destruction, and why buildings got taken out, because if a building wasn't stable and it just was being thrown down the river at like 20 miles per hour, the next building is going to get knocked out with it.
Yeah.
And so you can see videos of like how fast those buildings were moving.
And landslides.
Yes.
Like, I've lived here my whole life, and I mean, I know in some areas of like I-40, it's like watch for falling rocks. Like, that's like the most worried I've ever been about a landslide. But landslides took out whole families and homes and buried people alive, and that's never anything that I have ever worried about or knew to worry about. I if I'm being honest, I've always felt protected by these mountains, and because I have always felt that protection, this time after that, I had a little bit of a hard time like loving them the way that I've always loved them, because I just felt like, you have betrayed me. Like, you've betrayed me. This river I've always thought was so beautiful and strong, and now it is like deadly. I don't want to have anything to do with this river. So anyway, that's taken me some time to kind of heal, and I won't say that I'm 100% back to loving my mountains the way I always did, but I'm healing slowly.
Well, I think that the devastation was, it's hard to describe to people. They've seen it, obviously on social media, on the news, and this all happened just before a national election, right? A presidential election. So, I think that some of that was also being spinned and turned a little bit. And it was an emotional, it was just an extremely emotional period of time. And I think a lot of us are still trying to process what happened and still trying to navigate what life looks like. Because I think, I know when you drive down certain roads in the area, outside of tree brush and cut up trees being on the side of the road and not being, put into a place where they can be processed or taken away, things look somewhat normal on the surface, right? Not everywhere,
for sure. It does look normal.
But how are you guys navigating some of those feelings, emotions? How are people in the community doing it? What are you guys doing to move forward?
Well, first, like, before, kind of what I've done is, like, I got power back and water like pretty early. Like I said, I think maybe 4 or 5 days. So I really wasn't that long. So, but again, didn't have internet, so I was still relying on the crank radio, and we relied on that until it really got fully restored, which was probably a month later.
I'm gonna buy one of those, by the way, because that's a great idea.
But I relied on that crank radio to get all of my information, because we had no other outside communications really. But just sitting there, like, it ate me up. I felt so helpless because I hear all these people calling in and just saying, hey, I need help here. Hey, can someone come do this? Or or can we, do, and I just felt so fortunate that I had water and power. I'm like, this is a blessing. And so I'm like, what can I do to help? And I was like getting severely depressed, not being out helping. So first day I was like, I'm getting out of this house. I will walk or hitchhike if I have to, but I'm going to help someone other than myself. And so I ended up driving my car, which had probably half a tank. I was like, if I run out of gas, whatever, I'm going. But I drove to downtown Asheville to kind of see if I can help. And I literally walked all over downtown. I went to the city courthouse to help. I did water, giving out. And then there was another company called World Central Kitchen. I passed out food for hours just to help them, just to, get out and help people and be just helpful. Like I was like, I need to do something. I'm not getting eye care right now. So what else can I do? So that was what I did like the first day. And then my anxiety of not helping started to feel a little bit better. And then the next day, we went out to a little town called Marshall, North Carolina, which was hit pretty hard as well because the French Broad, not many people don't know this, but French Broad is one of the few rivers that actually flows north and not south. So everything that happened in South Asheville was coming all the way up to the north side. So everything that was in the water from south was being thrown into that little town called Marshall. And so we went there to try to help the little town recover, and it was just demolished. Like there was so much mud, like the mud was like up to my hips. And I'm not a very tall person. I'm 5'2", but wading through mud like that, it was just crazy.
She was in like a full
PPE.
Yes, and like digging mud out of a church.
Wow.
Like you could see where the water line was. And in the back of this church, this girl lived there with her son, and they were in there like cleaning it out. And like you could just, there was nothing salvageable except for the building itself, like the integrity of it. But anything in that building had to go because it was just covered in mud from everything that had come down. So that's kind of how I spent most of my time when I wasn't in eye care, was trying to help other people who needed it most. And so that helped me feel a lot better, just saying like I'm putting my efforts into the community that really needs it at this moment in time. But now processing, the thing I've done is like, because we have to be here and provide for our patients, like I can't be out there every day volunteering. So what I've kind of tried to do is make a list of all the places that I had ever visited. And if they had like a GoFundMe or something, or they needed something, I would try to get it or find a resource for them to at least help. And something's better than nothing in my opinion. So, and help in any way that I can, because those things are still struggling. So moving forward, that's just kind of what I've done. And then Dr. Perry here, the superwoman she is, did a whole free eye care day.
I saw that and I wasn't able to assess, but you tell me a little bit about that, Haley. You obviously have worked together with a group of local doctors and through Vision Source, and you put together an incredible day of service.
That's right. I
want to hear about that.
Well, so being evacuated and then same deal, like hearing what is happening on the ground. I had a guy, one of my patients called me. He ran at one point in the hurricane and fell and busted his glasses up. And I had to show him through photos while I was at the beach, like how to adjust them, because they were all kinds of, and they were broken. And I was like, if you can get a wire. And anyway, he got that figured out. And I was really excited, but it just was like, there is going to be a need here. I could just know that this was going to be a problem. Not really realizing the extent even then of how bad things were. And then getting back and people are watching that footage of homes washing away and things like that. It was like, I know there's somebody's glasses are in there, or their contact lenses are in there, or whatever that looks like. Yeah. So just a lot of, our vendors were really helpful with helping to get some of that replaced for free. But just knowing like, okay, if we could have one really big, impactful day that would just set us forward instead of everybody having to trickle into all of our practices. That's what I was thinking, is like, can we just get all of them together in one place? And so I threw this idea out really early to the doctors that are in my Vision Source group. And, they're all practice owners. And she was like, one of them said, we're just doing our best to make payroll. Like, this is just all we have right now, is that, because everybody was recovering. So it took a little longer. I had the idea early on, but it took us until I think the week before Thanksgiving to finally be able to put it on. But when I made the call, there's so many people, so many doctors here in Western North Carolina that showed up, that were Vision Source, non-Vision Source. And then my friends from Vision Source in Greensboro came, and Charlotte and Greenville, South Carolina. They brought their staff members. So we just had, and it was just a really big, fuzzy, happy day of being able to know you were doing something good. We have a unique opportunity with our skill set to be able to provide the service that not everybody can do that. Mm-hmm. So to be able to do that and make an impact in the way that we did, just felt really, really good. So we did it at Dr. Lisa Green's practice because she's got 8 lanes. That was going to let us be able to house the most people at one time. And yeah, it's one of the proudest things. I am the most proud, I think, of that day because it was just so much pain that we've all went through. And
the people were so appreciative. They had coffee, donuts, they all got lunches. And when we say they had eye exams, it wasn't just like glasses. They got a full eye exam, like retinal screening, pressures, all the things. They got a full eye exam and free glasses. And how many patients did we end up seeing?
154.
Wow.
And so but we saw, kids who didn't have glasses, like a -10, walking around no glasses. Mm-hmm. Just some really, really bad stories. But yeah, it was just it's just one of those things that, like, as much pain as we've gone through, it made you feel good and made you feel better to be a part of it. So I was really glad that we got to do it.
You guys both, I had so many goosebumps through both of your stories. I'm a big advocate for the 5 love languages, and it sounds like one of the ways that you guys love to show your love is through acts of service, not only just through providing, eye health and vision care within your community, but being able to step out of your comfort zone. Casey, going and doing all the different things that you volunteered in kind of fueled you. And I know, Haley, you wanted to get it going as soon as possible, but the reality is we all had to get back on our feet and start, helping people, but also resuming clinical operations so we can keep the business going, because that's a huge proponent. And there was a lot. The AOA had grants and Vision Source had grants, which have been incredible for the area. I know some doctors got hit a lot harder than others. We have close friends that had to remodel some of their practice and had to kind of scramble up until that point to get back into clinic. And so, fortunately, a lot of us as eye care professionals and optometrists, we prevailed, but I feel like there is a place in our hearts where we need to continue to practice self-care and practice self-care within our communities for others, right? So if you were somebody listening to this and maybe they live in an area of the country that they would never expect something like, because all 3 of us never expected something like this to come through our region, what would you do just kind of behind the scenes differently to prepare for something that you can't control, like a natural disaster?
So I have a generator now for the practice. I did not before. I haven't gotten a generator for my house yet, but I will be. Starlink is internet that runs through a satellite, and that was a huge deal. If you had one of those here in Western North Carolina, people were lining up outside of your house and, using the internet there because you couldn't get service anywhere. Mm-hmm. Personally, having some cash on hand. I used to make fun of doomsday preppers, thinking, I don't know what I thought. I thought doomsday preppers thought that the zombie apocalypse was coming, and so, bless their hearts, we had to, they thought they had to prepare for that, not thinking that a natural disaster would ever take me out. So having some cash on hand, I think, is important, and having a safe at your home. Mm-hmm. As far as the practice goes, generator, internet, and then some bottles of water, and having that up so that way you can keep going if you have those 3 things: communications, power, water. And so that's where we're prepared now to be able to keep going as a practice should this ever happen again. Although they say this was the 1,000-year flood, I hope I never have to live through this again.
Man, no, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. And even a little bit extra cash reserves, if you can afford to do so within a clinic, or an emergency fund, if you can afford to do so at your house, is always very helpful in times of chaos. And I really appreciate you both just sharing your side of the story. I know we all lived it differently, through different eyes, through different lenses. If you had any final thoughts for anybody listening, just about the circumstance and ways that they can best prepare themselves in the future, or any takeaways. I'd love for you to share them.
I'm going to touch on what Dr. Perry was saying real quick, and yes, that too. For me personally, I I'm always a huge proponent of having like a backup cash stash. So I had that. So I was thinking the one thing I didn't do because our mountains were going to protect us, that kind of thing, was I was like, oh, I'll get gas in the morning. Like I had half a tank. I should have filled my gas tank up on the way home that day. And I think the lesson I learned is like anytime there's a storm coming, like just go ahead and go get gas. Even if you just need a quarter tank, just go fill it up because you never know when you're going to need it. And then to have like maybe a little extra gas on hand for that scenario, because that was the one biggest thing is like kicking myself up because the city on their radio was calling saying, hey, we need people to go do welfare checks. We don't have enough hands to go to all these houses. And I was like hurting because I was like, man, I really want to go help, but I don't have enough gas to go all the way to the other side of town to do that, and so that was just because the police department, they just couldn't handle all the welfare check calls that are coming. So that kind of ate me up.
That's crazy.
Of these people that were sharing it. So that was one thing that I would do personally.
My wife lives on a 10% battery life on her cell phone. And usually the car, if it's close to empty, she keeps rolling with it. And that was a conversation we had for sure is, just, try to prepare. Even when storms, I always laughed moving from the north to the south that all the bread's off the shelves and the milk's gone when you have a dusting and that's coming, a little bit of snow. But if there's a chance, we will definitely be prepared. My wife's already a little bit of a doomsday prepper. The other question she's a funny girl. But the question I asked is just any final thoughts on the experience and, for the audience.
I don't want to forget the love that happened here, because I think that's the thing. Everybody was in it together, helping each other. It didn't matter which side of the political aisle you were on. You were pulling your neighbors out of the mud. You were getting their trees off of their driveways. You were getting off the roads. You were checking on each other, feeding each other. Those stories are so beautiful. And I think in that political climate when everybody was so up in arms everywhere with each other, we just had this little bit of a love story with each other here because of what we've been through. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to forget that part of how we were just like digging in and helping each other out. And so I want that to keep going. The eye care day that we had, I've had so many doctors that participated. We're like, let's do it again. It was so fun. I had such a good time. I hope that we get to do that again. Maybe once a year, who knows? But it was the love for me.
I guess the two things for me, one of them was like, in an eye care perspective, is that when you have no communication like that, it's also important because for my low vision clinic, it's just me there. I don't have any staff, but because we had no communication, I had a full schedule that following Monday after the storm. I was like, you know what? I don't know if anybody's going to show up, but I feel like I need to show up in case they do show up. So whether or not I have no communication, and ironically, every single one of those patients showed up that day, even though they couldn't call me, they couldn't text me, there was no communication. So just being there for your patients, I think, is just really, really important in that scenario. But then as far as like our community as a whole, Asheville's open. Come visit. We still need people to come because at first they were telling people not to come, but now that no one's here, we're hurting. The community is still hurting. Businesses are closing. So if you want to come visit Asheville, or if anybody wants to buy Ryan a gift card to his favorite coffee shop, go ahead and do that to support the local business here in Asheville. But supporting local is really good. I think we need that for our community right now, especially for the ones that are just gone now. That would be really helpful to get us back to some normalcy in places that we used to like to visit that we can no longer visit now.
I used to complain about the tourists.
Now we want you back.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you guys you wrapped a bow on that beautifully. It was perfectly said. And I really, really appreciate you both just taking the time to share everything. Where can people connect with you if they want to further discuss, any of the things that you're experts in or any of your experiences? What is the best way to connect with you both?
I'm on Instagram at Haley A. Perry OD, HALEY. So you can connect with me there.
Yep. And for me, you can send me an email. That's probably the easiest way at It's CKRUGOD at paulvisioninstitute.com. That would probably be the easiest email to get in touch with me.
Thank you both so much. And I appreciate everybody kind of tuning in until the end. Make sure you share this if you had some value, or if you felt like it's a story you want to share amongst our colleagues. And make sure you subscribe if you want to tune in for more podcasts and video content. But that's it for today. Stay tuned for my next podcast where we can reflect and grow stronger together.